day and a warm welcome to our monthly fourth Thursdays bite-sized financial coaching webinars. In just 15 minutes each month, you'll receive 2 to 3 actionable tips to improve your financial health. And attendees or those who connect with me for the replay always receive a complimentary personalized 15-minute Q&A follow-up session. This month, we're talking about how to maximize the value of inherited individual retirement accounts, or IRAs. Patrick Huey, owner and principal advisor at Victory Independent Planning, is our coach. He holds plenty of important financial acronyms like Certified Financial Planning Practitioner, but to me, he's a phenomenal husband, father, baseball coach, author, and host of the History Lessons for the Modern Investor podcast. Enjoy.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon. Today's session focuses on a topic many people my own age are being exposed to now and find overwhelming, and that is inherited IRAs and the distribution rules that accompany them. Now, with our parents' generation getting older, a lot of retirement savings is being passed down to younger generations, and they're just not prepared to deal with the intricacies of this process. Indeed, I have a client whose mother passed away recently, and amidst the funeral preparations, they were having to deal with trying to understand what was required of each of the children who inherited a portion of her IRA. So a very emotional time was compounded by the confusion that now often surrounds these types of accounts. So today I'd like you to think of this as the first of 2 sessions. This session is for general information. Obviously, in 15 minutes, I can't cover every single intricacy of IRAs and Roth IRAs that you might inherit. So I recommend a follow-up that you can schedule right now to talk about your own situation and get the personalized guidance you need, including a complimentary x-ray of what is in that IRA, what fees are associated with it, the type of investments you own, and how appropriate they are for you. A link to schedule that follow-up is in the chat right now, so you can access that at any time during this presentation. And this seems like a good time for our first poll question. What is the average size of inheritance received in the United States? That poll's up right now, so take a minute to answer that question, and I'll give you the answer in just a minute. Whether it's dealing with the rules for traditional IRAs or Roth IRAs, the process can feel like an intimidating maze of timelines, classifications, and of course, regulations, especially after the changes introduced by the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement, SECURE, or SECURE Act of 2019, and its subsequent iteration, the SECURE 2.0 Act of 2022. Pieces of legislation, and you have to love how they name them, designed to improve retirement savings and security for Americans, which had the added benefit of making all of this a lot more difficult, complex, and complicated. Inherited IRA rules are often difficult to navigate with multiple variables like the type of IRA, the original owner's circumstances, and how you're classified as a beneficiary all coming into play. And these complexities can leave many people unsure about their next steps when it comes to these inherited accounts. Okay, looks like just about everyone has answered our poll question, and I'll let you know that the answer is that $46,200 is the average size of inheritance received in the United States, which is dragged down, no doubt, by the significant portion of households who receive no inheritance at all. I think it's also interesting to note here that many Americans expect to inherit more than they actually do. So let's start today by looking at inherited traditional IRAs. Traditional. Over the past few years, new laws like the Secure Act have brought significant changes to inherited IRA rules. Concepts like the 10-year rule and required minimum distributions now play major roles in determining how these accounts are handled based on the original owner's circumstances and the beneficiary's relationship to them. So let's start by defining all of this jargon so you can know exactly where you stand. And to do that, we'll walk through how to take distributions from a traditional IRA in a step-by-step manner to help clarify how these decisions are made. Step one is classifying the beneficiary. That first step is determining if you fall under the category of eligible designated beneficiary, EDB, or non-eligible designated beneficiary, NEDB. I think of this as ED versus NED to simplify. Ideally, you want to be an ED, but the requirements are more strict, and eligible designated beneficiaries are harder to identify. Those EDs will include spouses, minor children, or someone who is chronically ill. NEDs, who don't qualify for these designations, will face stricter distribution rules and have far less flexibility in their income planning. So in general, it is better to be an ED, but you don't really control whether you are or you aren't. In my client's case, he wasn't a minor, he wasn't terminally ill, and he was clearly a NED. Step two is to determine the owner's required beginning date, or RBD. So whether the original account holder started taking their required minimum distributions before they passed away is significant, as it affects the distribution timelines and requirements for the beneficiary. What is a required minimum distribution? Well, RMDs are required withdrawals that you must start taking once you hit a certain age, which depends on your birth year. If you don't take out at least the minimum amount required in a given year, you could face a hefty penalty, up to 50% of the amount you were supposed to withdraw, depending on when the withdrawals began. And the amount you're required to withdraw each year depends on your age, your account balance at the end of the previous year, and a formula provided by our friends at the IRS. To simplify the question here is, did the owner pass away before he or she was required to start taking money out? So you need to know when they were born and when they were required to start distributions, which right now is usually when they turn 73. With those two pieces of information, step three is then to apply the 10-year rule. Maybe. If you're a non-eligible designated beneficiary, NEDs will need to completely empty the entire traditional IRA within 10 years of the original owner's passing. And if the owner was past their required beginning date, you must also take out required distributions each year. So there's no waiting until the end and doing it all then, which we typically wouldn't recommend anyway. If you're an ED, however, lifetime distribution options are often permitted. And this means that they can take their distributions over their own lifetime, which means smaller distributions if they're younger, with no 10-year rule, unless you want to take the money out over a 10-year period and the deceased hadn't started their required distributions yet. Okay, if that's clear as mud, just remember that traditional IRAs come down to understanding three critical factors: your classification as the beneficiary, the timing of the account owner's required withdrawals, and whether you're subject to the 10-year rule or eligible for life expectancy distributions. So to cut through the confusion, we've developed simple, easy to follow flowcharts for both traditional and Roth IRAs. And these tools break down what can often feel like an overwhelming process into clear steps, helping you better understand your options and requirements. If you want a copy of these flowcharts, just text the word inherit to 239-567-5477, and we'll send them to you. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. But all you need to do is text the word inherit to 239-567-5477. That's simple. Just text it, and these are all yours. How about another poll question? We'll launch this one, which is, according to financial research firm Cerulli Associates, it's anticipated that baby boomers and members of the silent generation will pass down how much in assets over the next 20 years? Is it 13 trillion, 51 trillion, 67 trillion, or $84 trillion? Think that through as we turn our attention now to Roth IRAs, which are generally more flexible than traditional IRAs, but still subject to many of the same new rules post-inheritance. While Roth IRAs are not required to take RMDs, required minimum distributions, during the original owner's lifetime, beneficiaries must still comply with regulations about timelines and classifications. So step one is still figuring out who's an ED and who's a NED. Just as with the traditional IRAs, that first step is determining whether you're an EDB or an NEDB. EDs can still take advantage of stretching distributions over their lifetime, whereas NEDs are typically bound by the 10-year rule. Step two is application of the 10-year rule. Again, maybe. For NEDs, inherited Roth IRAs must be distributed within 10 years of the original owner's passing. The good news, Roth distributions are tax-free since the original contributions were made with after-tax dollars. Step three is then to figure out the RMD implications post-inheritance. Well, Roth owners, as we said, don't face required minimum distributions during their lifetimes. Inherited Roth IRAs do. If the beneficiary qualifies as an ED, he or she can choose to stretch distributions over their life expectancy. And these rules are meant to ensure that these accounts aren't held and passed on indefinitely. Again, thanks to our friends at the Internal Revenue Service and courtesy of Congress. So the key takeaways for Roth inheritance rules, to simplify, are: one, ensure that you know your beneficiary classification. And two, confirm whether the 10-year rule or life expectancy distributions apply, and proceed based on your own individual planning and those requirements. Okay, back to our poll question. And it is estimated that Americans will pass down an estimated $84.4 trillion in assets through 2045, with $72.6 trillion going directly to heirs. So, as we've discussed, inherited IRA distribution rules, whether for traditional or IRA accounts, can feel completely overwhelming, even intimidating. but we can help. Sign up for part 2 on inheriting IRAs at the link in the chat. That's the free busy link at the top of the chat right now. And get the flowcharts by sending the text message to sending the text message inherit to 239-567-5477. That's inherit to 239-567-5477. Both of those are in the chat right now. These resources are going to help you better understand your options and demystify the process as you work to manage your inherited accounts. But remember that getting the distributions right is only part of the process. You also have to make sure that the accounts are integrated into your financial plans. Inheriting doesn't mean you have to leave things the way they were. You now have full control over these assets and need to make sure that they're working for you. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. If you have any follow-up questions or need further clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help ensure that your inherited IRA decisions are well-informed and aligned with your goals and objectives. Thanks, everybody.